Dear students, you are welcome in this class. Today we are going to discuss the relationship between nutrient supply and crop growth. That means how much nutrients are to be required by the plant for growth. First thing is that in crop production or in agriculture, we want optimum growth. We also want optimum supply of the nutrients. If supply of the nutrients is in short, then growth will be affected. If it is in excess, then only the growth will be affected. So to get the optimum growth of the plant, we need optimum supply of the nutrients. So for this, in brief, let us check the learning objective of this class. Discuss the relationship between nutrient supply and plant growth. How a short supply, optimum supply, or higher supply will affect the growth of the crops or plants, and to understand the quantitative changes in crop growth in response to application of nutrients. If I apply X quantity of nutrient, then how much is the change in growth? If I apply X2, X3, X4 quantities of a particular nutrient, how it is going to affect the response of the plant, how it is going to affect the growth of the plant, what should be the optimum levels of the nutrient. So glossary, I think I'm not going to read it. You can understand yourself. You can go through. Presentation is already available with you. So let us see, just I can recapitulate, I can summarize the growth, meaning of growth, and what are the factors affecting it. I have already covered this subject in another course, Principles of Crop Production, in much detail. So what is growth? A permanent increase in size and dry weight, or you can call it irreversible change in dry weight or growth of the plants or crops is your growth. For example, in cereal plants, if you have tilling kind of crop, rice and wheat, so this tiller, number of tiller indicate the growth. Same is the case of leaf area index. Why do we measure leaf area index of the plant? It is just to see the changes in the growth. Similarly, you also measure dry matter accumulation at different stages of the growth. It also tells us the growth of the plant, whether it is growing or not, at what pace, at what rate the plant growth is happening. So for this, we have variety of parameters, measures to measure the crop growth. Sometimes we can take fresh weight, sometimes we can take dry weight, we can take number of tillers, number of plant height, all are the measures of the growth. And if growth is in excess, that means that will be wasteful application of the nutrients, unnecessary application of the nutrients if it is not optimum. Because you know that at excess growth, you may not get better profits. The crops can be susceptible to several biotic stresses if you have excess growth. So we need optimum growth. So income of the farmers can be enhanced by combining the optimum level of the inputs. Here we are dealing with the nutrients. A number of factors affect your crop growth or plant growth. So for example, external factors, the factors of growth can be divided into two. External factors, your outside factors, internal or genetic factors means your varietal factors or crop factors. Certain crops or varieties have more growth with the same level of input. With the same level of fertility, you can expect higher growth. And some crops or plants may be more responsive to the nutrients. Some may not be more responsive to the nutrients. Like pulses, you apply any quantity of nitrogen, it will not affect their growth much. Similarly, if you apply more and more quantity of nitrogen in cereals, they will respond more. And within a particular group, for example, you have maize, you have composite variety, you have local varieties, and you can have hybrids also. So requirement of nutrients or response of hybrids is more with respect to nutrients. So the genetic factor also affect your growth. External factors are three: environmental factors, management factor, and socioeconomic factor. Management factor is your crop related to crop practices or cultural practices, like selection of seeds, selection of varieties, right time of sowing, or your water application, irrigation use, and all such factors, and application of herbicides, etc. All the factors or practices that affect the growth of the crop, besides the nutrient, are management factors. They affect the growth. Socio-economic factors are credit facility of level, education level of the farmer. All these factors affect the growth of the crop. Environmental factors are important. In this, you have two kinds of environmental factors: biotic factors and abiotic factors. Biotic factors are your insect, pest, and disease, and your weeds. They make up your biotic factors. They can reduce the growth, whatever levels of nutrients you supply, but that will be immaterial if your crop is eaten by pest or consumed by the pest. Then abiotic factors are your wants plus light. Plants wants W for water, A for atmosphere or air, and for nutrients. So here nutrients are factor of the growth, and T is for temperature, S is for soil, and L is for light. So these are the factors which affect the growth. So in this case, you can see that nutrient supply is also an important growth factor. So we restrict only to one input, to one growth factor, which is nutrient supply. A great deal of factor affect the crop growth. Under abiotic factors, availability of nutrients is listed as an important factor of crop growth. You have seen in the last slide that nutrients are a factor of growth. Thus, adequate supply of nutrient is necessary and also for optimal growth. And balanced supply is also important. If your supply is not balanced, then crop growth will be affected. So therefore, we have law of minimum also. We'll try to know that. So now question comes, and in the last case also, in the evaluation of soil fertility, we were discussing the quantity of nutrient. How much quantity, what quantity of nutrient should be applied? You have evaluated the fertility by different methods. Maybe you can identify the soil fertility by visual diagnostic, by seeing the deficiency or toxicity symptoms of the nutrient. You can go for plant chemical analysis. You can know qualitatively or quantitatively. Qualitatively is your rapid tissue test, and quantitatively is your doing the chemical analysis of the nutrients in the laboratory. And then only, if you get the result, then you cannot decide that how much quantity of nutrients should be applied. You can know, just a minute. हाँ संजय, हेलो, ये मुंबई गया था, मुंबई RCFL. Sorry. So by chemical analysis, you can know the concentration of the nutrients, and you can see whether the plants are having low concentration of nutrient or higher concentration or optimum concentration of nutrients. So you also can see whether plant is having critical concentration, because you have analyzed the plants. So you can check which nutrient is at critical level or below the critical level. If you move above the critical level, if you make supply of the nutrients, then if your concentration of the nutrient is at critical level or below critical level, if you supply that particular nutrient at that time, the response is very high. And then you still supply more nutrients, it will go on increasing. And when you reach beyond the critical level, the change in response will decrease. The change in response will decrease. But this critical concentration cannot tell us how much quantity of nutrients should I apply. That is the problem with this. Then, therefore, you switch over to the soil testing or soil chemical analysis. It will also not tell us exactly how much nutrient should be applied. Then we go for conducting the field experiment to go to the real situation. Then we can find out the optimum level or optimum dose of the nutrients. So here, just to repeat something about critical concentration of nutrient, I have already gave you definition, the meaning of critical concentration of nutrient. You get the maximum possible yield. Maximum possible yield here is that when no nutrient is at deficiency level or no nutrient is in excess, the supply of all the nutrients is at optimum level. At that particular level, you get the maximum possible yield or maximum yield. So the concentration of nutrient in soil or plant, where you get 10% reduction in yield, that is your critical concentration for deficiency or maybe for toxicity also, either in soil or in plant. That is your critical concentration. The correct critical level can be worked out to know the response of crops to the applied nutrient. We can know the critical level. When at the level of the nutrient, when you get where you get 10% reduction in yield or where you get 90% of the maximum possible yield is the critical concentration. The response to applied nutrient will be higher if nutrient concentration in crop is lower or below the critical level. The response will be much less if the nutrient concentration in the crop is higher than the critical level. So then the response or change in the growth will be smaller and smaller. Nutrient deficiencies or toxicity in soil crops are usually identified by chemical analysis. You can do chemical analysis of the plant. Better is by evaluating crop responsive to applied nutrient. Then just knowing the critical concentration is not enough. We need to apply the nutrients into the soil so that we can see the response. What would be the optimum level of nutrient? If crop responds to applied nutrient in a soil, this suggests that the nutrient is deficient for the crop. Relative decline in crop yield in the absence of a nutrient can give idea of the level of nutrient deficiency. Now, what can be done? How can we find out the optimum level of supply of nutrients? How to get it, how to know it? So there are different techniques or different tools or different laws or different views are available to know it, to understand how supply of the nutrient is related to the growth of the crops. So in this, I have listed 4. There can be some more also. For example, Levick's law of minimum. It is also related to the supply of nutrients in relation to the growth of the crops. Similarly, law of declining yield improvement. Law of declining yield improvement was given by who gave this law? Law of declining yield improvement. Shubham?
Mr. List.
Mr. Lee. Good. Spillman's equation can also be used, Pauli's concepts, curvilinear models, and nutrient use efficiency. So these are all related to the supply of nutrient in relation to plant growth. So first and foremost is Levick's law of the minimum. Plant yield is primarily dependent on the factor that is most in the minimum. So the simplest meaning you can understand for Levick's law of minimum, that your suppose you need 17 essential nutrients are there for the growth of the plants. Suppose out of 17, one is missing. The missing nutrient will affect the response of other nutrients. If you supply this missing or nutrient which is present in lowest quantity, if you supply that nutrient, the growth will improve. Next, the another nutrient can become deficient. Then you need to supply that nutrient also, then the growth will increase. So likewise, he said. So he said that the most important nutrient responsible for growth is that one which is present in least quantities or minimum quantities. He talked like this. So therefore, this Levick's law of the minimum is basically suggesting us to go for balanced fertilization. But it is not giving exactly how much nutrient to be applied. What should be the optimum quantity of the nutrient? It does not suggest that law, because that time the subject of soil science and plant nutrition was developed in the development stage. Later, the law was inferred that this single factor decides the production. Yield increases in linear fashion on increase in this factor. He said like this, that yield will increase in this fashion, linear fashion, till some other factors which is now in short supply must be correct. So another factor can become short or deficient. I think you very well understand the law of minimum. I usually say that you can have your food where you can have all kind of items, your rice, dal, chawal, meat, anda, whatever you want, but you forget to add the salt. You will not eat. You will not eat if salt is not there in your food. So therefore, this salt or sodium here becomes the nutrient which is present in minimum or least quantity. So if you add salt, little salt, then your desire to eat will increase. And then you can add still more salt, then you can eat. So you need to optimize the salt. You need to optimize the salt. So therefore, next time you will say, okay, I also need ghee. So ghee can become your second important factor. So likewise, your Leibniz's law of the minimum can be understood. So response to a nutrient also depends upon many other factors. It is not just one factors. Other factors like management factors, soil and climatic factors. So I told you that nutrient is one factor. Even in nutrient, you have 17 nutrients. Likewise, there are some other factors which also affect the response of nutrients, which also affects response of nutrients. You can have two kinds of soils. In one kind of soil, you are adding water. In another kind of soil, you are not adding water. So response of nutrient will be high in case when you add water to the soil, compared to the another case where you have not added water to the soil. So the supply of nutrients also interact with many other factors, many other management factors, soil factors, as well as climatic factor. So here you can see one example from Havlin book. So you see this picture, nitrogen input is on x-axis where it is increasing. The supply of nitrogen is increasing. There is no shortage of nitrogen. So what happens? You get growth A. A is the growth. Say you get about, say, 30% or say 25% of the maximum. This is the growth. On y-axis, you can consider growth or yield. So this is A. But here you can see water, phosphorus, and seeding rate are limiting factors. So if you can overcome the water, if you just supply water, then your yield can become B. Your yield can go up. But now another limiting factors may be phosphorus or so seeding rate. Now you have come seeding rate also. You have transplanted the plants or you have put some more seed. Then your yield, you have overcome the phosphorus issue also. You have supplied the phosphorus. Then seeding rate can become limiting factor. So if you remove or overcome the phosphorus deficiency, then your yield can become C. From B, it can go to C. You can remove this shortage of seeding rate also, then you can get 100% yield. So here you can get D, which is 100% of the maximum. Now we go to the second law, which is law of the declining yield. So you can find many deficiencies in this law of minimum, which cannot tell us exact quantity of nutrient to be supplied. Overall, that is the limitation. It says that balanced fertilization is important. You need to optimize the level of each nutrient, but how much to be added into the soil, it cannot tell us. Or what would be the optimum level of nutrient, it cannot tell us. But see the law of declining yield improvement given by Mr. in 1909. He proposed two laws in relation to growth, yield, and supply of growth factors. Dear students, if you want to get more knowledge on this subject, this Mr. equation and other related things, you can read 1 or 2 chapters from Soil Fertility Evaluation by C.A. Black. I have given you that book. Its soft copy was shared with you. So you can see detailed information about this topic from Soil Fertility Evaluation by C.A. Black. So he proposed two laws. First is Mr. law of physiological relationship. Yield can be increased by each single growth factor, even when it is not present in the minimum, as long as it is not present in optimum. So from minimum to optimum level, you can continue to increase the yield. Second is Mitscherlich's growth law. Increase in yield of a crop as a result of increasing a single growth factor is proportional to the decrement from the maximum yield obtainable by increasing the particular growth factor. So it can be explained that as you increase the supply of a particular growth factor, initially the yield will increase at an increasing rate, and then it will slow down with the addition of each input. The increase or changes will be smaller and smaller. So based upon Mitscherlich's growth law, he was able to find out the optimum level of nutrients. So what happens? Mitscherlich made one equation. Mitscherlich discarded Liebig's assumption that yield increase produced by fertilization was directly proportional to the quantity of the nutrient applied. Here, quantity of the nutrient applied means nutrient which was present in minimum. But what Mitscherlich said, plant growth increased as more of this nutrient was added, correct? But not in direct proportion to the amount of the growth factor added. Means you are adding more and more, but say in same proportion, the changes in Y or changes in yield will not be there. The increase in growth with each successive addition of the element in question was progressively or successively smaller. Mitscherlich concept is expressed mathematically as dy dx is equal to a minus y into c. Dy dx is the rate of increase or rate of change in yield produced by additions of the deficient nutrient x. A is the maximum possible yield obtained by supplying all growth factors in optimum amounts. Y is the yield obtained after any given quantity of the factor x has been applied. C is the proportionality constant or efficiency coefficient or factor. So this defines the law of declining yield improvement or Mitscherlich equation. Then Spillman came into picture. He gave his equation. In 1924, he edited a book dealing with the law of diminishing returns and its relation to biological production relationship. So you can also say Mitscherlich equation was based upon the law of diminishing returns. And Spillman developed a mathematical expression of crop yield response to plant nutrients. So Spillman form of Mitscherlich equation, he did some mathematics on Mitscherlich equation and found his own equation. Y is equal to m minus ar power x. Y is yield expected from x amount of applied nutrient or fertilizer. M is theoretical maximum yield attainable that can be attained. A is theoretical maximum increase in yield obtained by increasing x, and R is constant. So these days, nobody is using this Spillman's equation. I've gone through the literature and only Mitscherlich equations are still being used by many researchers across the globe. Many people are using this Mitscherlich equation for calculating the optimum level of inputs. Now, Paul's concept, it is also theoretical concept. It has no practical application, but people try to understand it. Paule in 1918 proposed modification of Mitscherlich's law of physiological relationship. Paule said it is not the absolute increase in yield, absolute increase which was decreasing. You see, which was decreasing. It is not absolute increase in yield that reflects the effect of fertilizer, but the percentage increase in yield or the percentage of the maximum possible yield produced by fertilization. So he has given a constant change, or he made a proportionate decrease, which was fixed. For example, first unit will give you 50% increase. Second will give you 50% of the previous increase, means it will become 75. So likewise, it will go on. He said like this, he introduced the concept of effect quantity, H, which is quantity of the nutrient necessary to produce half or 50% of the maximum yield. This quantity is known as Paule unit, the quantity of nutrient that is required to produce 50% of the previous increase. 1 Paule unit will increase yield with 50% of the maximum, 2 Paule, 75% of the maximum. Now, Paule's concept, when 1 Paule unit of a nutrient is present, That means x plus b is equal to 1 and y is equal to 0.5a, so that log a minus 0.5a, some log was used, is equal to log a minus cx. Based upon Michel's equation, log a minus y is equal to log a minus cx. So finally, you can see this Paulus concept can be expressed as log a divided by 0.5a is equal to log 2 is equal to 0.031 is equal to c. So value of c was found out as 0.301. So where x is nutrient from fertilizer and b is nutrient from the soil. The values of c for all growth factors may be represented by 0.301 if the supplies of the various factors are expressed in Pauli units. It is not being used anywhere to find out the optimum dose of fertilizer. It is just for some academic use. The most important and final thing is that you can go for curvilinear relationship. You can establish the relationship between nutrient supply and the response, how much response you get. Therefore, you can fit response equations. These curvilinear models can be fitted. These models are based on law of diminishing return, where quadratic, square root, log, Michel's equations are fitted to the yield response data. So here, these equations can establish the relationship between nutrient supply and the growth of the crop. So it is quite common in biological organisms, including crop. You know, S-shaped growth is there. Initially, it is slower, then increases, or growth is at very faster rate, and then growth slows down, and then it reaches maximum. That is your curvilinear kind of relationship. The pattern of plant growth over time, which usually starts slowly, increases to a fast rate at intermediate growth stages and slows down towards the end of the life. The optimum dose of fertilizer to a crop is that rate which produces maximum economic return. If I ask you what is optimum dose of fertilizer, even I can say optimum dose, then it is the dose where you get maximum benefit or maximum economic return. It is possible to determine the optimum economic dose of fertilizer if the equation is, if the relationship is established as quadratic. In that case, you can find out the optimum dose. If it is linear, then you cannot find out the optimum dose. So economic yield targets usually do not exceed 80% of the maximum potential yield. So normally speaking, that people have done number of experiments to establish relationship between nutrient supply and plant growth, particularly with respect to nitrogen. And they found that optimum doses are not normally 80% of the maximum yield dose. So these are the relationship people observe. The approach described does not include other economic variables here. You are taking only one variable at a time. Even that one variable may be one nutrient only. So you do not take other variables, economic variables such as fixed cost associated with fertilizer use or interest rate to be paid or loans or other kind of costs you are not including. You are keeping other costs as fixed. And then other thing could be nutrient use efficiency. We can know the response of the nutrient with respect to nutrient use efficiencies also. These are important tools that tell us that how much yield or how much response can be achieved by adding a particular unit of input or fertilizer. So nutrient use efficiency can be very well used to know the response of growth. Nutrient use efficiency is the maximum economic yield produced per unit of nutrient applied, absorbed or utilized. So there are a number of ways to define the nutrient use efficiencies based upon the nutrient quantity of the nutrient applied or absorbed or utilized by the plant to produce grain and straw. So number of indices or indexes are available. I will discuss only few indexes. Useful to differentiate plant species, genotypes, and cultivars for their ability to absorb, utilize nutrients for maximum yield. So in this case, variety of comparisons can be made if you can work out the nutrient use efficiency. Depending upon the type of nutrient use efficiency, you can distinguish, you can compare plant species, you can compare genotypes within the species or varieties. Some of the commonly used efficiency definitions are on the next page. You can see these are most commonly used or employed nutrient use efficiency indices. Partial factor productivity of nitrogen is applied nitrogen, often simply called as nitrogen use efficiency, or it is nutrient use efficiency. So instead of nitrogen, you can consider it as nutrient use efficiency. So you may be interested in zinc. In place of nitrogen, you can write zinc or any other nutrient. You can write phosphorus. So I'm just giving example with respect to nitrogen, but it can be applied to other nutrients also, or extended to other nutrients also, or extrapolated to other nutrients also. So here, just take example of nitrogen. So kg harvested product per kg nitrogen applied or nutrient applied. Partial factor productivity of N, nitrogen is Y, and yield you are getting at that particular level and divided by the rate of fertilizer nitrogen. Similarly, it has got relationship with agronomic efficiency. Partial factor productivity of nitrogen is equal to yield at control divided by nitrogen rate plus agronomic efficiency. So you can get partial factor productivity. This is the relationship. Then agronomic efficiency of applied nitrogen is kg yield increase per kg nitrogen applied, Yn minus Y0 divided by rate of fertilizer application. And it has a relationship with recovery efficiency and physiological efficiency. If you multiply these two, you get agronomic efficiency. Then recovery efficiency of applied nitrogen or nutrient is kg increase in N uptake per kg nitrogen applied. So here 100 UN minus U0 divided by Fn. And similarly, physiological efficiency. So you can go through this use efficiency, they can tell us response. If you apply so much quantity of nitrogen, then you get, for example, in rice, if you apply say 50 kg nitrogen, you can get about 25 kg grain. If you apply 100 kg nitrogen, you can get 20 kg grain. If you apply 150 kg nitrogen, you can get 15 or 16 kg grain. So likewise, this is response you are seeing. And you can also optimize here also. What would be the optimum level? You can use economics here. If you know the agronomic use efficiency, of applied nitrogen. So here you can easily put economics also. You must be knowing the value of additional grain because it is Yn minus Y0. So how much additional grain you are getting, you know the efficiency. And you also know that it is because of 1 kg nitrogen. Because fertilizer rate is there as a denominator. So you can easily work out 1 kg nitrogen will give you how much additional grain of rice. So then you can know the value of this grain, how much is the value in terms of money, and how much is the cost of 1 kg nitrogen. So per kg nitrogen, you can very well calculate the economics here also, if you know the agronomic efficiency. So here you can find out the dose where you are getting maximum return or maximum profit. So therefore, it can be used to optimize the doses of the nutrients also, this agronomic efficiency. Higher nutrient use efficiencies are desirable as these result in maximum economic returns. As we increase, means with each kg of nitrogen, with each kg of nutrient, we should get more and more grain. Nitrogen is one, the cost will remain same, but if we increase the yield or response, then definitely we can get more profit out of it. So we should increase the nutrient use efficiency to get more profit and minimize the environmental pollution related to the fertilizer application. So researchers always try to increase the N use efficiency or nutrient use efficiencies. Factors now, if we want to increase the nutrient use efficiency, then we must know the factors or the cultural practices or management practices that can improve the nutrient use efficiency. In most of the cases, you will find the response in terms of crop growth or yield is as numerator, is on the top. And it is divided by, or denominator is always your nitrogen rate or nutrient rates. So definitely, if at the constant rate of denominator, if you can increase the numerator, then your efficiency will automatically increase. And that numerator or yield can be increased not just by fertilizer. If all the management practices are at optimum level, then they will also increase your yield or your Y or growth. And then you can get more with less nutrient. So we should know the factors that govern the nutrient use efficiency. So as usual, as I always tell you that climatic factors, soil factors, climate, plant factor, crop factors, and management factor, they will affect most of the things in our agronomy or agriculture are affected by these 4 factors, you can remember. So if you start with the climate, in climate, you have temperature, you have rainfall, you have solar radiation. There are a number of climatic factors and you want to manipulate these factors. For example, rainfall. If rainfall is not happening, your growth will not be good. And sometimes rainfall may be in excess. So you can remove the excess water. You can go for waterlogging. If there is shortage of rainfall, you can go for mulching. You can go to conserve the water or you can apply irrigation. You can go for variety of options are available. Go for drip irrigation and so many things that can increase your nutrient use efficiency. So of course, climatic factors will affect your nutrient use efficiency, but can be manipulated. Can we optimize these climatic factors? That is important. So variety selection, we can select the varieties. Sometimes temperature can be limitation, low temperature. We can choose variety which can tolerate low or high temperature. So selection of genotype is also important to counteract, to overcome the problems created by climatic factors. So variety selection and efficient crop management can result in better control or better management of climatic factors. They will not affect our crops adversely. So adoption of efficient crop and nutrient management practices is important. The next is soil factors. What are soil factors? You already know. The chemical, physical, and all the biological properties. All these factors or properties are actually factors. And you can add soil erosion to that. You can add soil pH. You can add your toxicity, alkalinity, soil compaction, all kind of physical, chemical, or biological properties. If you take them towards negative side, they will decrease the efficiency, nutrient use efficiency. If you take soil factors towards positive side, means better microbial biodiversity, better soil structure, better pH, optimum pH, no crusting, or increased organic matter levels are there in the soil. All these factors, if you take towards positive side, they are going to increase the nutrient use efficiency. And if you take these factors or soil towards negative side, means your soil structure is not good, your soil compaction is there, soil is alkaline. All these negative soil factors will affect or reduce the nutrient use efficiency. So what can be done? Appropriate soil and water conservation measures should be followed. Means you should stop soil erosion, improve soil physical, chemical, and biological properties. It is too easy to explain. Restore soil fertility by improving the physical, chemical, biological properties, optimize pH, and adopt the crop rotations. They can help in conserving the soil. They can help in improving the soil structure, and they can also help in controlling the or managing the biotic factor, insect pest, and diseases. Now, crop factors can also affect the nutrient use efficiency. As I said in the beginning, some factors affect the growth of the plant. It includes external factor and genetic factor or internal factor. So internal factors are related to crop. Certain genotypes may have better root growth. Root growth is very, very important. Root architecture is very, very important. The size and number of root hair is also important in nutrient uptake and water uptake. So there are a number of crop features which are important for uptake of the nutrients or increasing the efficiency of the nutrient use. Particularly root architecture is very, very important. So crop factors can affect the nutrient use efficiency. Cultivation of nutrient use inefficient cultivars. If you have chosen inefficient cultivar or variety, then you will get lower nutrient use efficiency and adoption of cultivars that are sensitive to biotic stresses. If you choose disease susceptible or pest susceptible genotype, your nutrient use efficiency will automatically decrease. Not because of nutrient, it is because of your reduced growth by other factors. Because your crop growth is always as a numerator and your nutrient is denominator. So what can be done? Identify the cultivars or varieties which are more efficient nutrient use efficiency, which are tolerant to insect pest and disease. So, and also we need to give, we need to have strategies for improving the root growth. If we are able to improve the root growth, if there are no hindrances for the root growth, we can increase the nutrient use efficiency. Next and fourth factor here is fertilizer factor or nutrient sources. Nutrient sources also affect. So you already know 4 R's: the rate of application, the sources, the time and method. So take the case of rate of application. As you go on increasing the rate of fertilizer or rate of nutrient application, initially you can, the nutrient use efficiency can increase, but after a certain level, or rather even at the first level, you will get highest nutrient use efficiency and then it starts decreasing. So you need to optimize the level of nutrient where you get maximum profit, not the maximum nutrient use efficiency, but maximum profit. So that is rate. Similarly, source of nutrients are also important. So in this case, you can compare different sources. Some slow release fertilizers are available, and some, for example, ammonium sulfate is.
डिलीवर हो गई
डिलीवर हो गया, डिटेल दिया हुआ।
प्रिंट आउट दिया है अगर ये प्रिंट आउट थोड़ा अच्छा नहीं है उसमें एक नंबर दिया हुआ है इसमें इस पे आप हो सकता है कि मैं आप प्रिंट आउट निकल जाएगा।
So I'm sorry. So you can see the sources. Sources are also important. If you apply rock phosphate in the soil, if you compare it with the single superphosphate, so phosphorus use efficiency will definitely higher from the single superphosphate compared to rock phosphate. So fertilizer sources, you can take any sources and you can compare the use efficiency. Same quantity of nutrient you can supply, but their efficiency will vary. Now we have neem coated urea, and if you compare with simple urea, its use efficiency is higher. Therefore, it is in the market. So sources affect. Then your time of application is also important. If you apply phosphatic fertilizer as a top dress in the standing crop after sowing off the crop, then you will not get much response. Response will be least if you go for top dressing of phosphatic fertilizer, maybe single superphosphate, because this phosphate will not reach the plant roots. If it is not reaching the plant root, it hardly moves half an inch in the soil. So it is useless to go for top dressing of phosphatic fertilizer, better to place it. So time of application is important. Similarly, method of application, you can have fertigation. If you have fertigation, you can have better results, better use efficiency of many nutrients compared to broadcast application. One method is broadcast. You can compare with the placement also. So for phosphorus and potassium, the band placement, or you can say the placement in the soil will give you better result compared to the broadcast application. Take the case of rock phosphate. Band placement will give you poor result, but broadcasting will give you better result in case of rock phosphate. So all these factors of fertilizer management factors affect the nutrient use efficiency. Or for example, application of water. Many times farmers apply nitrogen or urea, and then they apply water. The fertilizer will wash away. Leaching can be there. Urea can be leached down. So simple management of water is also important. So inefficient management of fertilizer or nutrient will affect the nutrient use efficiency. So fertilizer should be used at right dose and right time using scientific methods. Choose the fertilizer which have higher nutrient use efficiency. Adoption of balanced fertilizer. Here, balanced fertilization is also important if you want to increase the use efficiency of other nutrients. Nutrient use efficiency of NPK will be poor if you do not add sulfur or zinc in many cases. So if you add sulfur and zinc to NPK, it will increase use efficiency of NPK. So balanced fertilization is important, and SS and NM can also be used to increase the nutrient use efficiency. So cultural practices or agronomic practices are equally important. Your monoculture, inappropriate cultural practices, late sowing, inappropriate seed rate. Your seed rate is too low or too high, it will affect the response to nutrients. Method of sowing, depth of sowing. For example, you apply same dose of fertilizer of two wheat crop. One is broadcast sown, other is line sown. Same input, everything is same, but you will get more response if your line sown crop is there. So method of planting or sowing, weed management is also important, insect pest disease management. So if we follow crop rotations, if we follow efficient crop management practices, including water, weed management, so we can increase the nutrient use efficiency. Thank you very much, and your questions are welcome. If you have questions related to this lecture, you can ask. You are most welcome, and open your video so that I can take your attendance critically today. You are 26 and 12 are present. I will report to the respective professors, agronomy professor, and this will be noted down. You are taking it too lightly. You are taking me or my classes too lightly now. So I have to follow some other ways. Okay, so now your questions are welcome. And any question on this subject? No question? Shubham? Achappa? Eh? No question? Should I ask question? Should I ask question? I said one
Sir?
point. Yeah, you have question, Apurva?
Sir,
Yes.
sir, physiological efficiency will be the best indicator for the fertilizer, or because it consider the uptake of the nutrient.
See, there are variety of ways to express nutrient use efficiency. Overall, it is actually output divided by input. You can take in a simpler terms, output divided by input. But here, physiological efficiency is fine. What you said is okay. But overall, ultimate aim of all the efficiencies of measuring all the efficiencies is economics. Everything stops at economics, the profit to the farmer. So best, from my point of view, is your agronomic efficiency. Through agronomic efficiency, you can calculate the response with respect to per unit kg, and you also get the profit per unit nutrient. So I think physiological efficiency is for academic interest. For academic interest, it is better how much 1 kg nitrogen or nutrient is absorbed, how much is the change in yield. So here you want to increase the uptake, but increased uptake will not always result in increased grain yield. It follows almost same pattern as you follow in case of agronomic efficiency. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, now I ask a question to all of you. I said rock phosphate. Rock phosphate should be broadcast applied. If you have single superphosphate, if you have NPK, if you have other phosphatic fertilizer like monoammonium phosphate, diammonium phosphate, or water-soluble phosphate, then I said you applied band placed. It should be band placed in the soil. And if you have rock phosphate, then it should be broadcast applied. So why it is so? You got the question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, why it is so?
So because rock phosphate is water insoluble as well as citrate insoluble, so it could be applied as if it would not be easily fixed in this soil. But SSP is water soluble, that's why it could be fixed easily. That's why it is band placed to reduce the fixation.
Correct answer. Absolutely correct answer. She's saying that we apply rock phosphate because it is having no soluble phosphorus. It has no, this totally citrate insoluble phosphorus is there. Maybe 16 to 80% phosphorus in rock phosphate. So whatever phosphorus is there in rock phosphate, it is tightly bound. It is not available. So if you apply in bands, then it will come in very small contact of the soil. But if you broadcast it, then it will come to in contact with the larger volume of soil. Then it dissolution, then it will solubilize easily. Of course, it will not solubilize so fast, but compared to band placement, it will solubilize more. And similarly, if you take this water soluble phosphorus, DAP or SSP, then if you broadcast it, again, it will also come in contact with the larger volume of soil. So fixation will be more. So if you place it at a narrow space or with the minimum contact of the soil, then its fixation will be less. So her answer was absolutely correct. So how to increase the solubility of this rock phosphate? How can you improve the efficiency of rock phosphate?
So we can treat it with sulfuric acid.
Good. We can acidulate it, we can treat it with sulfuric acid, and then we can apply it into the soil. Any other way? We were talking about mycorrhiza, we were talking about biofertilizer, phosphatic biofertilizer. Do we have something like that which can be used? Can green manuring be helpful in solubilizing rock phosphate? Can organic manure help in the solubilization of rock phosphate? Will it be possible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Why don't you say those things also? It will help in solubilization of phosphorus. So, with these words, I thank you all. And if you still have any question, you can ask. Time is there. We have 2-3 minutes more. So, if you have any question, you can ask. So, no question, then thank you very much. See you Wednesday at 2:30. Wednesday, you have practical class. So, seeing your interest now, I'm not very much interested because there is limit to everything. There is limit to everything. My presentations are available on the YouTube, so it can be seen by you. And maybe Wednesday, I think would be my last class, and then I will not take classes. If all people say, then I can take classes.
Yes, sir, we are interested.
Because,
Yes, sir. We are interested.
well, I'm not keen. I'm also a human being. I'm not that much. Anyway, thank you very much, and I'll see how it goes. Okay. So we see you Wednesday, and those who are absent will get reminder from their professors, and I'll send all kind of attendance of those. I know people who are not attending the classes. I'm keeping a watch on that. Don't worry about it. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you.